I've got an amazing guest today, and I'm really excited. Her name's Anthea, and she is well. She wears many hats, but she is extraordinary in that what she does. Nicolette TV is ready for you. I remember some of my past lives too, so that is congruent with my experience in that sense of I saw some of the things I'd done in previous lives and so on. And I think I was shown that some of my past lives to actually make me understand and help me to be a more forgiving person because I was actually quite grudgy. Nicolette TV, coming round your way. Oh, God, you've got your books there as well. Excellent. As I said, Anthea's wears many hats. Very exciting lady and very interesting lady. She's a personal trainer, a very good one, because I know because I've done her classes and I've benefited a lot from her classes. She's also a mystic and a writer, and she also channels from spirit. And so I'm very excited to hear what you've got to say and what evolves organically from our conversation, and want to talk about the books and other things, her life, and which has been very interesting. So over to you, Anthea. You can introduce yourself better than I can. And yeah.
Oh, that was a lovely introduction. So thank you so much, Nicolette. So yeah, I mean, for me, in my adult life, mostly in terms of work, I had gravitated towards work that was about helping people. And typically it was working with young people that were struggling. Maybe they had been excluded from school or risk of exclusion, had been offending. I worked with their parents and carers. And I'd done that for most of my working life, apart from 3.5 years where I did some advertising work, but then went back to that type of work. But in 2011, the local authority I was working for were making redundancies, and they were reducing basically their positions in a particular department I worked in from 4 to 3. And at that point, I knew here I needed to let go. And I needed to become self-employed because I had gone through, as you do in different, situations, a feeling of just, I think, feeling disempowered. Yeah. And I knew I wanted to kind of not feel that way. Mm-hmm. And so what happened was I decided to put into, for voluntary redundancy. But what was quite interesting was even though that was accepted, I still went for one of the other jobs and I didn't actually get one of the 3, and I was so upset. I cried for about a week.
You decided to be self-employed, hadn't you? So at that point, or was that later on?
No. So what it was I had done. It was two things going on for me.
Yes.
So one, I decided already I needed to become self-employed. So that was a decision I knew right away, deep down, this is what I need to do. But I also applied for one of the other jobs and I didn't get one of them. And I cried for about a week about it. But what was interesting was when I then kind of saw the reason of the confusion in my mind was I was just struggling to let go of being employed and having that, what we might seem as security. But really, my heart was set on being self-employed. So once I, felt excited about that idea, I then pursued doing similar to what I had been doing, predominantly working with parents and their carers, and I'm working in a self-employed way. And I worked for a couple of different organisations and did sort of different types of parenting work with them. And what happened though, also additionally in 2011 was because I had now let go of sort of being just with my head down, get up, go to work and not really be looking left or right.
Yeah.
I started to, I think, just open up to other things around me. So I started to take walks on the canal and I started to take in nature. I started to play in a steel pan band and just start breathing things in, noticing nature. I mean, at one point I remember thinking, I thought, the robin birds with the red breast.
Yeah.
I thought they didn't exist anymore.
Oh my God.
Because I just hadn't seen them. You know what I mean? It was like a child thing. And I was kind of like, oh my gosh, I really have missed out. So anyway, that was the beginning of me starting to open up. And what happened was one of these times when I was actually walking along the canal, I was given a vision of a brown baby with cradle cap, and I had never seen anything like that before. And it was like a photo had been given to me, and I wondered what it was. And later on, I got to learn that it was actually being given a vision of the fact that I was going to go through a rebirthing.
Oh,
Now,
okay.
I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't following any particular religions or anything like that. That's what I
You
later
haven't,
learned it
you'd
was.
never channeled before then or anything. You
No,
hadn't had any spiritual experiences or any spiritual and nothing spiritual at all. You hadn't any. There was no spirituality in your life. I should, yeah, okay.
no, not at that point. And so I didn't, as I said, realize what it was at the time. But what happened was I continued to, have this opening of really beginning to change. And that's actually the second chapter in the first book. It talks about this. And what then happened was in April of 2012, I had started really just before then looking at different types of, I would say, spiritual organizations, that were talking about trying to go forward and trying to grow and feel uplifted. And I had been then starting to watch a live streaming of a spiritual organization in America. I had previously looked at a book that had, lots of spiritual sayings, and just starting to sort of see things beyond the kind of the immediate physicality.
Okay. So what
And
can I just ask quickly what sparked this change? Because going from someone who wasn't spiritual at all to starting to feel that you wanted to explore spirituality, was there any event that sparked this change, or was it just purely something that started to happen gradually and organically in a way? I mean,
yeah, no, absolutely. It was intuitive within me.
okay.
I hadn't planned to do this. It was something that I think if I look at it now, I realize that it's there for everyone, that there's a journey for us to take to discover our spirituality.
Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it, but it was there. And the big catalyst, in a way, was letting go of something that wasn't working for me and being in that employed situation where I felt quite oppressed. I felt I didn't have any power or any autonomy. That was where, if you like, that was the time when it was going to be an opportunity for me to either let go of what wasn't working and start to surrender to what could be, even though I didn't understand all of that, but that was ultimately what it was going to be. Hence the vision of the rebirthing. Or I could have continued to push everything to one side and suppress everything and continue to be unhappy. But it's something that's there for all of us to take that journey at some point, but you don't have to. But that's kind of what it was. So what happened was, long story short, just moving up to April 2012, I had just before then started doing meditating, just sitting up in bed and just trying to be present, be silent, no particular method, no focusing on anything, no particular words. And I then said at that point, it was on the 28th of April 2012, I wanted to do something with my hands. I didn't know what I was talking about, to be honest with you, but it was something that I said aloud. And I was then going to yoga. And I actually shared this with one of the ladies that had been going to yoga. And it was odd in a way because although I knew her, I didn't know her that well. So to share something with someone that you don't have that closeness with, especially when it doesn't make sense to you, was a little bit surprising to me. But I got to see afterwards it was purposeful because she knew about hands-on healing, and I didn't know anything about that at the time. And anyway, she talked about hands-on healing. She talked about courses she had been on. She recommended courses, and I then decided to look into maybe doing something like that myself. But when I actually did that, I started to try and print information off, my printer, and it got jammed. And at that point, I knew I was being shown let it go because this idea of doing something with your hands hasn't come from you thinking about it; it's come from within. So I did, and it was only just under 2 weeks where I learned that I had been given a gift of being able to do hands-on healing by putting my hand over someone's head.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the being that was doing the healing, but by being a vessel through which healing could take place, people could receive healing, whether it was emotional healing or physical healing, inspiration or enlightenment.
So
And all of this,
who's doing the who's the being who are the beings that are doing the healing?
okay. So what it was it was a gradual learning for me about this, because, you know, this was literally me, like you asked before, any kind of religious, you know, kind of real understanding or anything like that. I'd been to a Christian church when I was younger, but, you know, none of that was something that I could relate to, because it was not reflective of, you know, kind of the things that made sense to me in terms of what was going on in my home. And I'll come to that in a minute. But at the time, it was just what was given, and I just went with it, as if, like, you know, I understood more than I did. And I didn't know who was doing the healing. I didn't know anything more other than what I had been given to understand. So what happened was, I then, with that, went and said, well, let me try this. I don't really know what to expect. And I began to initially try it on my mother, who I'll call Jane. And I've mentioned in the books, I refer to my mother and father as Jane and Richard. So Jane is the mother. And I, you know, said, this is what I'm believing I have. And I did put my hand over her head, and she ended up going into a very deep sleep, which was very surprising to me. And then I did it again. And the next time she said that she felt there was some kind of pressure in her forehead. So I kept exploring this. And ultimately, I then started doing tasters in a, they don't exist anymore, but it was an organization called, or a shop called, As Nature Intended. And they sold, you know, like alternative medicines, and, you know, very much into healthy food. And they would have local practitioners that did alternative types of healing, or, you know, therapeutic services, and they would come and do something for free. And that was like a rotational thing that they were providing service to be done. And that's what I started doing, without any knowledge about really what was going on. But I was just literally watching what was happening in terms of people sharing with me their experiences. Because when I was doing it, I didn't get anything myself personally. There was no knowledge given to me about what the healing was, that was happening, or the person's needs. I would just find out because they would say to me, I saw this vision, I felt this sensation, this happened to me. Or they would share with me a progression of development of a healing, you know, down the line. And what I learned, and this is now sort of speeding things up to kind of a much later sort of time, but I learned that Jesus was doing the healing through me, and I was a vessel through which he was going to heal. I didn't really understand anything more than that. But what I did understand specifically was it wasn't to do with Christianity. And the specific thing that stood out for me was because when I was in the shop As Nature Intended, the people that were approaching me, I never approached anyone. I just had like a little, you know, photo frame with just a summary of what I was doing. But I would let people approach me. And it was people of all sorts of different nationalities, all sorts of different religious and spiritual beliefs. And it made no difference. Sexuality, you know, none of those things, none of those discriminatory things that can be, you know, unfortunately, be a thought that somebody might have, came into who was being healed. So I learned that it was him, and it was at one point that I heard him say that I wanting to heal you, as in myself, and heal through you.
So
So this,
how did he start coming through? I mean, if you said it's not based on, because most of us know Jesus as a Christian, as a Christian entity. So how did he present? If you said it wasn't in the context of Christianity, so how did he present himself to you, and how did he start, you know, this process with you, so to speak?
yeah,
You still
yeah, no.
say, am I right?
So say it again, sorry.
You still work with him.
Yes, yes,
Yes.
it's still the being that does the
Ongoing.
healing through
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah. But what it was for me, the evidence of the healing that was happening in terms of who it was happening to. And again, in the books, it talks about this. So it was people of all different religions, as I said, different sexualities, people with different spiritual beliefs. So what I got to learn was what he was showing me was that there wasn't actually an identification of a religion. It was just healing, just love, pure love, with no discriminatory practices or rules. And that's how I got to learn about that love. And what it was that continually I got to see, and at one point I did attend the church for a short period of time. Again, it's in the book. And what I was able to do was to contrast the difference between what I was hearing in this, not that different to any other church, typical Christian church, where it was very specific about this is a religion that is better than other religions because we are speaking sometimes not positively about other religions, and it's therefore a discriminatory practice, even though we wouldn't want to identify with that because we would feel like, upset if people thought that of us. And what I looked at was his healing was with no discriminatory practices. And again, that's what's spoken of in the book. So that was the distinction. And what I was being given to be shown was that going into even more detail and crossing over with the both books was if you look at what has happened is over the years, and I'm talking about, sort of hundreds of years, from when he came to the earth in the Piscean age, he was actually a perfect human that had had many lifetimes, and that through the challenges that he overcame, he was able to manifest that pure love, which is called the Christ. But the Christ isn't a person, the Christ is just pure love. And what's happened is it's become as if it's his surname, as if it's Jesus Christ is a person. But Jesus was his name. But the Christ, that pure love, has manifested before with other perfect, if you like, beings that have come to give us as a human race understanding of how we can evolve as a human race. So, roughly every 2,000 years, the Christ, that pure love, has manifested in a being. So you have Enoch, that people may know of. You also have Melchizedek, who was around when Abraham lived. And they always come to manifest that pure love. And
So
what
why
it
does this
was,
happen? Why does this happen in this way? Because it seems to be a very specific way where, and also the pure love. Can you talk about that a little bit more so that I just trying to, so that people can understand a little bit more
yeah.
about,
So,
what that actually is? Because I well, for me specifically, I mean, I feel as if everything is love in a, so what is this pure love? What is that? What
okay.
makes the difference between someone who, and why do they come in these specific time periods, and
Sure. No, absolutely. It all makes sense. The questions you're asking. What it is that as a human race, we are here to evolve and basically ultimately to grow a greater ability to love. So every 2,000 years, that is when we have a new level of learning that is possible for the human race to evolve. So when uh, Jesus came in the Piscean age, he did give all of this understanding about past lifetimes and about, why we go through the struggles we do. But the only thing that was really going to be understood and taken on because of our level of, if you like, development as a human race then was just the fact that you love your neighbor as yourself. That was the limit, and it was understood. And again, the books talk about it. There's scriptures in the books that explain that it was known that that was as far as it would go, but that was actually supposed to be for all of the different types of religions that were there. It wasn't about it being that Jesus came for one religion. You'll see in those scriptures it will talk about him being different countries, being in Tibet, in India, in Assyria, in Egypt. And it was about that being the only way to look forward is to see your neighbor as yourself, love your neighbor as yourself. But what happened over time, and again, as I said, it speaks in the books, it was known that there would be changes to that. So then it would become, with all the religions, quite man-made, and it would then become about rules, and it would be, you know, something that in the end was going to defeat the purpose of the original idea of having something that might help you to focus on love. So different religions, different spiritual beliefs might have different ways of, you know, trying to focus on love. You might have different ways of dressing, you might have symbols, you might have different ways of singing or chanting or dancing, and they should all be about how can I love, 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 love. But what's happened is over the years, hundreds of years, it's actually become, if you don't do this, you're wrong. If you don't wear this, you're wrong. If you don't sing in this way, you're wrong. um, but that's what was originally the reason that he came. And what it is every 2000 years, it's an age. And that is when we are able to evolve as a human race. So when this current age started, the Aquarian age started in December 2012, the
Yeah.
next age in 2000 years from then will be the Capricorn age. And that will enable us to, again, evolve as a human race, because there'll be more understandings about what it is that we can now take on.
Yes, because I feel as if the human race at the moment is just actually started to understand this, the the energy and of pure love, that it took all that time for us to actually understand, um, maybe what Jesus was actually saying at that time, 2000
Yeah,
years ago. It's taken us, almost 2000 years to actually
yeah.
and
But
I feel
it
as if
was known.
where the world is now is just it's the fullness of that understanding is has is coming about or come about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that also, to be, you know, kind of fair to us as humans, if you like, there was a understanding already that even though he came with that teaching very clearly, it wasn't going to be able to be fully taken on by us as a human race in that age. And so when, as most people know, it was spoken about his second coming, it was, I get confused, and people thought it was going to be the end of the world, but it was the ending of an age and the beginning of the next age, in terms of him being, you know, if you like, manifesting the Christ to help us to grow again. And what it was that this age would actually enable us to now start engaging more in spiritual understanding. And the specific things that would help us to grow and evolve are that we have had past lifetimes, all of us. And what has happened is, in those past lifetimes, the reason that we're back on the earth is because the things that we did wrong in those past lifetimes, we never put them right. So we've come back to put them right. And what it is that the biggest challenges that everybody is going to experience at some point in their lives, it might be two, three, or four, those are the things that are happening to us because of what we did wrong in our previous lifetimes. So, as it explains in the first book, for myself, um, as a person that has obviously in this lifetime experienced racism, it was because I was a perpetrator of racism in a previous lifetime. Also, again, explained in both books, when I grew up as a child, the home with Jane and Richard um, was fueled with coldness, and it was specifically really because Richard was a perpetrator of domestic violence. And what it was as a child, it therefore meant that you grew up with lack of warmth and neglect. And what it was that the reason that I would need to experience that as a child is because I had children in my previous lifetime that I neglected. So I would need to experience that myself. Also, what happened in a previous lifetime was those children that I neglected, when they grew up, they didn't have a sense of self because they didn't have obviously the love and the warmth and the emotional support. And so they learned to develop unhealthy relationships. And so for myself also, I would experience that. And again, it speaks of in the books about me developing relationships, platonic and non-platonic, that were unhealthy because I didn't have a sense of self. So that was also what I was going to experience as, if you like, my challenges in this lifetime. And then my other big fourth challenge was that in the previous lifetime, I had the opportunity to help people that were struggling financially, and support them, and I didn't. So in this lifetime, I was going to struggle financially, so I would experience what they did. And I'm not now in that place, but I was. And again, it speaks of that in the books, the different things that I went through. So
So
once you've actually,
sorry, what is the reason for these karmic cycles? Well, I mean, why is it all structured this way? Is what I'm kind of curious about.
sure. So what we do always has consequences. So there's never a reason as to why we haven't got a outcome that is without an understanding of why that happened to us. So if, as explaining with my previous lifetimes, that these are the things I did wrong, then that would be the natural consequence for me. And it's the same for everybody. So nobody is in a situation where they have been wrongly attributed a challenge or an affliction in this lifetime. And
Okay.
what it means is that when you then actually come back into your lifetime to put it right, which we've chosen, we all choose to do this. So we all have chosen the challenges that we're going to experience in this new lifetime, but it's subconscious, not conscious. So that's why the struggle then begins, because we feel like a victim sometimes. We feel like we've been, wrongly put upon. But once you've actually started to understand that, my challenges and afflictions were not wrongly attributed to me, they were because of what I have done wrong, you start to see your whole way of living and life and thinking differently, because the feeling of being a victim is no more. Also, one huge thing that changes is your ability to forgive, because you realize that we are all here because of our wrongdoings. So when it comes to looking at other people that have done wrong, and particularly people that maybe are still maintaining that wrongdoing with you, you are able to see that I cannot not forgive them, because at the end of the day, I am also doing my paying of my outstanding debts because of the wrongdoings I did in my previous lifetimes.
So you were talking about past lives, and I remember, I mean, some of my past lives, and I think I was shown, these. I was shown what they were to actually make me more of a forgiving person, in the sense of I used to be quite grudgy, and but then when I saw them and I saw that I'd done things to people as well. It was like it was very neutral as well. It's like what it was like watching a film or something. It was like even though there were kind of horrible things happening to and by me, it was kind of almost laughable in a way. It didn't seem very serious. But the thing, what I was going to ask was that even though so that helped me to kind of like it helped me to become a much more forgiving person. But even though I know this, I've seen this, I still have some issues with forgiving people still. Um, Even though I'm a lot more forgiving, I still have some remnant of difficulty with forgiving. So I'm just wondering how could be overcome, or how, yeah, if you could just explain more about
Mm.
the issue of forgiving in terms of past lives, I guess you're talking about karma as well. Is that right?
I mean, yeah, the karma is, yeah, the past lives that what we, in terms of experience in this lifetime. But I
Mm.
mean, the example I would use again, which is in the book, is that Jane, so I refer to her as Jane, my mother, just to remind people that that's the name I'm using for Jane, and Richard as my father. She is with a husband, that is sort of since her and my father, Richard, um, divorced. And in 2008 and 2011, he touched me inappropriately. And I didn't have, at that point, the courage to speak out about it. And I didn't find that courage until 2012. And I told her initially, and she, a long story short, and again, it sort of speaks about it in the book, but she was kind of angry at me that I hadn't told her earlier, and there was no sort of compassion or, kind of, just distraught feeling that you would expect to have if that's what, you've heard from your daughter. And in 2013, I then went and found more courage. I know that I've got spirit gave me the ability to go and just basically confront him in front of her, because I hadn't done that. And so she was able to see clearly the reactions of him. He initially said nothing, didn't question me, he said nothing. So she knew that this had happened. And also he had done something to a lady on the train in front of her. So she knew that this was, the person that he is. And that basically the last time I, sort of confronted him, when I confronted him and when I, was engaged with her, was in 2013. So 12 years ago. So there was no relationship there with me and her, and obviously with me and her husband or my brother either. And I'll explain to you a bit more about what that is in a minute. But what it was I had to learn to forgive, because if I don't, it is a darkness in myself, but there's no relationship with them. So it means that in the book again, it talks about I had 6 prophetic dreams that I didn't understand them at the time. They were in September 2012, and I wrote them down. And I later learned that they were all showing me that if I continued to have a relationship with her, I would never have peace. And one of the dreams was me going up a narrow stairway, and I just couldn't get to the top, and it was dark, and I was, getting quite stressed because of it. And I eventually got to the top, and at the top of the stairs, it was their front room, and they were both sitting on the sofa with their arms folded. And what I got to learn is it was showing that she wasn't helpless, because obviously she had been in a domestic violent relationship before. But what I also got to learn was that even at that point, when Richard had chosen to go back to living in the Caribbean, she was going to go and live with him until he said he didn't want her to. So she wasn't, like, obviously I know sometimes it does happen where someone feels like they cannot get out of a domestic violent relationship. This wasn't the situation for her. And I was given these dreams to show me that actually when I speak out, I won't have anyone. And one of them was, that I would be literally with 1 or 2 people, which is a cousin of mine who is actually somebody that has a healing, which is a testimonial in the one of the testimonies in the first book, and my son, and that would be it. And everybody else would not want to make the stand against her, and obviously him as well. But what I learned was, and there were messages I had to give to her that are in the books that I was receiving from mediums, and it was really just to give her the most opportunity that she could have to put things right, so that she would understand that the consequences of her wrong choices wouldn't disappear. Because when you go back to the spiritual realm, if you haven't taken on the learning you've come to take on when you come to the earth, because the spiritual realm is graded in levels of spiritual growth, if you don't take that on, those learnings you've come to learn, and obviously have your own growth, you will end up in a lower level in the spiritual realm. And it's a bit like being depressed on earth. So I was to give her messages, and it was very hard because I did feel, a certain way about it. But what was very interesting for me, because these were clairaudient messages that I was giving,
Is that what
was
how you receive messages clairaudiently? I mean, with sound. That is, you hear.
It's not even like a sound as in you and me speaking. Occasionally I've heard some very specific words as in you and me are speaking now, but it's just a knowing. It's almost like there's nothing and I know.
Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. And what it was that I was to enable her to see that there would be consequences for her actions if she didn't change and put things right. So, but what I was really kind of amazed at was right, we talked about going back to the pure love. That pure love is that there is no um, other than that is evident in that energy. And I could see the difference of when those words were being spoken through me clairaudiently, when Jesus was speaking those words, it was spoken with the purest of love. But I also could sense at the same time I was struggling. And I had to keep focusing and really working hard to bring my like feeling of forgiveness to a level where she could continue to receive her messages, because
Because
that
he couldn't come through if you had the resentment strong. All right, because
exactly
is that a vibrational thing?
100%, 100%,
Mhm.
100%. And it took, and again in the book it talks about the messages, the time, and how long it took. And it what was interesting was I felt that I had done the forgiveness. I like initially felt I get the understanding of the past lifetimes. I've forgiven her, but there's no relationship that will happen now. So, but when those messages came, I realized there was more to let go of. And what it is that if you are not able to let go, you will always have blocks, whatever it is.
So what does that mean then? What's the distinction between that final letting go and because you said you'd already forgiven? So what was the difference between the final letting go and what you had done in the past? What's the distinction in practical terms, or just in or if you can describe that in a way? What was the
Yeah, no,
yeah?
yeah, that's a good question because it is a distinction. It is that there was no last kind of feeling negative towards her.
Okay.
It was actually, that there is compassion for her because it is something that she is going to suffer in a way that cannot be understood by her, and that it isn't something that she could have avoided, but
When you
because of her own.
I'm
Hmm?
sorry, go on.
Yeah, so the compassion is that, and because we were the same, and the compassion, if you like, of that pure love has been given to us, and so we're back here with an opportunity to put it right.
But when you say that she's going to suffer for that, that is that like because that is because you're saying it's not like like traditional ideas of hell and heaven and stuff like that. So what is the suffering involved? Because I always feel that if people do wrong to other people, the suffering is actually built into the action. Because actually, I feel that if you're doing something wrong, you're already suffering quite a lot. Just that, I mean, because you're the only thing that generates, well, as far as I see it, the only thing that generates bad or wrong actions is like existing suffering. I feel as if someone has to be suffering, and the worst behavior that they exhibit, the worse their suffering already is. So I'm just wondering what the suffering would be then, if what because you're saying that, as far as I understand it, that after she passes, that you said there are levels in the afterlife, if you like, where
And that's what it is.
levels where where people are actually suffering, and you said it's something like depression. If
Yeah, it's like being
resolve
depressed.
their negativity, then there's a level where it feels like depression. Is that what you were saying? Am I?
That's exactly it. And what it is that you can't just jump to another level. And the only time that you can have an opportunity to come back and have another lifetime is in the next age, which is an age is roughly 2,000 years. So in a way, you can understand why people have got different ways of describing this awful situation that we've had already, because we're back. We've got this another chance to put things right, as all those on the earth plane. But that's what it is. And so that suffering is real. And it is that we have come to use our beings, and use our opportunities of being, if you like, able to put our outstanding debts right. We've been given that compassion and that love by spirit to come and put it right.
But I feel as if that we, at base, that we are this love and compassion, and that why do we then have this kind of veil when we come into life? Often, I mean, like you say, there's people that are, and then we have to learn all over again. What to me we already are in essence. Why is that? Why do we have to have this veil and have to kind of do things and go through these elaborate scenarios, basically, of action. Why do we have to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question, because ultimately the goal is pure love. You're asking about what that pure love is,
Yes.
and how can you sort of distinguish between that pure love and maybe you love somebody. And it's that love that is ultimately like perfection, but we are growing and learning how to develop that more and more and more. So if, for example, I didn't take on those really awful things I did, and I didn't go through that remorse, because when I did, I remember one time, and I was actually shocked that when I was going through this very particular period when I really had to absorb it, it was an ugly thing to stomach. And I remember a sound coming out of me like an animal, wounded animal. And it was that period is very uncomfortable, because I can talk about those things now, but when I was having to take them on properly, it was not something that was easy. And I remember just being kind of very much in my home and very tearful and very kind of distraught. But once you take that on, and you really then feel the remorse, because that's what it is. It's not kind of a fleeting thing that we can come and, yeah, I did those things that are wrong. They weren't good, but I'm moving on. You have to go through that remorseful period, but then that's what frees you and opens you. The forgiveness is something that then you are able to achieve easily, because you really understood, my gosh, I really did those things, but the love and the compassion I have from spirit is enable me to go forward. And what happens is, when we go back to the spiritual realm, because there is no end to love, when we are maybe perhaps now we're supporting someone on earth, we're part of a team supporting an individual on earth, and we're helping to inspire them to see how they can create more love in their life, whether it is what they create for others. Maybe they are someone that has been given a new way of making something happen, and that helps somebody in some part of the world to have a bit more of a loving experience of whatever it is that they're doing. Or it might be to do with other forms of life, like animals or plants or trees. It's always, our goal is love. It's the perfection of love, and there's never any end to love. So that's what, if you like, if you were looking at then what the Christ is, that pure love, that's what our goal is. But we would never complete it, because there's no end. There's always going to be an opportunity to manifest and create more and more love. But we have a purpose. So there's very specific things that we've been given to do. We've said we're going to do them before we are incarnated on the earth. We've agreed. We've agreed to go through the challenges, and we've agreed to create these outcomes of love, whatever they are, however they manifest in our lives. That's what we've come to do. So that's for us to pursue. And that's why, if you don't, and there's obviously, different things that may happen in terms of, someone may genuinely struggle a bit, but they did the most that they could really manage, as opposed to someone choosing to do the wrong thing and maintaining it. But that's the joy. And also the thing is, if you think about it, everybody's got their own unique, amazing gift to bring to the world.
For sure.
If you don't have that letting go completely of that forgiveness, that you're, the way that you're feeling about people that have hurt you, you will always not be fully open to manifest that beautiful gift that spirit has given you to manifest on the earth.
Okay. So, so when you talk about this pure love, and how we need to, well, pay our karmic debts, if you like, and start to have more compassion, have to be like, we be completely open in terms of love. Does the karma that we actually, because we agree to the karma in a way, you said beforehand, this is what you're saying, is that before we come into the world, we've already agreed to take on the karma from our last, and then we forget, obviously, so we have to we have to remember in some kind of way, even if it's not consciously, like in the mental sense. But I'm just wondering then, when this karma does return, comes back round to us, um, isn't that enough to actually allow us to let go and to move past that, the burden of that, if you like.
You move through it, so you
Yeah.
don't continue, you don't stay in it, because in a way what it is then you're kind of, if you like, set free, because you've gone through, you've taken on um the difficult truths of what you've done previously, what's wrong. You go through that real remorseful period, as I was, kind of describing in terms of my personal experience,
Mhm.
and then you're set free to go and create the most amazing things. That there's no limit as to what you can create because you're now open. So spirit can use you to do this and do this and do the other, and that's the you feel liberated, and that's the kind of the journey. And then it means that what you're ending up doing is you're ending up serving, which is what ultimately we're here to do, but serving others in a way that is the most perfect, beautiful way for you, because that's what you've been put on the earth ultimately to do. But that's the journey that you are to take. And when we start off, it's all there. It's just subconscious, but we have to discover it, because we can't just come in as if we are like just going to be able to know, because it's a discovery. It's about going inwards, and people go inwards in different ways. It might be that you just don't do anything, you turn off the TV. Some people might have rituals, but it's inbuilt in us to go inwards. And it sometimes, is something that takes, different people in different, kind of to different places in their lives before they get there. It might be, like I was explaining with myself, I didn't know that this was going to happen, but I was kind of at rock bottom in 2011. And that's when I was kind of like, going to have this change. I didn't know it. Um, some people don't have that experience in the starting to open, but they still have to go through. And the way the books are written, clairaudiently, is that when people read it, they will be also supported by spirit to be very specific about what are the wrongdoings in their past lifetimes, so they don't get confused and think, does it mean that I did this or this or this? Is very specific. So it's not just a kind of, I might misinterpret, because two people might have, you know, similar kind of thoughts about what it is that they did wrong, but it actually is quite different for each person. And spirit is going to be supporting everybody to get very clear, so that when they go through that remorseful period, they are actually with the right understandings, and then they are able to move forward. And the forgiveness is a huge part of it. And for me, when I look at, as I said, the difference when I realized that way of actually being able to forgive, that level of forgiveness for me is really, I would say, um, most easily possible when you equate it to the wrongdoings you've done in the past lifetimes and the compassion that you've had. Without that, it's quite easy to feel like you've forgiven, but you haven't really, because you're still feeling upset. But it is a very important thing also to not have relationships with people where they haven't shown remorse for what they've done to you in this lifetime. And that's why sometimes people get confused when they think forgiveness means a
Yeah,
relationship, and
forgiveness,
it
forgiveness
doesn't.
is letting, yeah. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
a difference between forgiveness and let's say being a doormat or something.
Yeah, and also the thing is, when you go back to pure love is that you want the best for everybody. So really, like for example, when I've said to all my family members that, unless they let go of the relationship with this person, then I can't have a relationship with them. But that's pure love, because as well as it being to protect my own peace, it means you're consistent with the right way for them.
Yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So once you get this unconditional love and this forgiveness and stuff, does that mean that you then get into a state of pure love then?
Yeah, it does. It literally, I mean, if I think about, there was one time I was on the canal, and and it's in the book as well, I actually saw swans on the canal, and I had a thought, and it was like, I wonder if they could fly. I didn't know if swans could fly. And I also was thinking that it made me think of myself, because I was thinking, I wonder if I could be light. I felt heavy. And what was so incredible was it wasn't that long after, a couple of days later, I was back on the canal, and a couple of swans, like literally in front of me, they flew off and then they kind of landed a little bit further ahead. I was like, wow, I've got goosebumps actually talking about it.
Yeah.
But what it was it was very symbolic, because it was about the fact that what it means is that's how you feel. That's the journey, but that's how you feel. And as I said, if you think about then the enormity of spirit, where there's endless possibilities and you're a vessel, then spirit can use you to do the most amazing things, but it's always going to be the thing that was the perfect thing that you came to do.
Yeah.
So it will be the most, yeah. So it's that's kind of the ultimate, amazing life on earth that you then end up really being able to experience. But that's the journey.
So it's like heaven on earth, basically. It's like,
Yes,
yeah, yeah.
yes, yes.
So tell me more about the books.
So I mean, everything I've said in the books.
Yeah.
One thing I would say that hasn't been really spoken about, which is the names. Power Flower, aka Indigo Swan, and they were two spiritual names that were given to me. And Power Flower was actually given to me because the sunflower is the symbol. And what I was shown, my nan gave that to me from the spiritual realm. It was a message that I received. And what it was that it was like a sunflower that is drawn to the light, that people will be drawn to me because of Jesus doing the work through me. So that was one. And then Indigo Swan, we just talked about the swans. I remember understanding the swan, because I thought, okay, yeah, I get that. Indigo, I didn't understand initially, but then I learned that it was an anagram for God in I.
Oh, love it.
Yeah, yeah. And so with my work, what I then learned, which was for me, I could not believe it, but gradually I started to understand that after the hands-on healing, that what was going to develop, and the hands-on healing started in 2012. I then was exploring and doing that till 2014. That was what I was shown to do. I then went into the fitness work, trained as a personal trainer, fitness class instructor, was doing some hands-on healing for free in my home back in London. And I thought that was it. I didn't think anything more that was going to come. But then in 2018, I was shown that there were books coming and the clairaudiency was going to start developing, because that hadn't developed.
Okay.
And I was going to find out that, going back to the second coming, I was talking about with Jesus, that what I was going to be used as, the reason why he was doing the specific work through me, was because he was going to use my physical voice to bring people to understand the teachings of the Aquarian age. So I received lots and lots of messages, and some of them are in the books, but the specific ones I received that kind of really point to that was that the violet light, which is the highest level of healing, was seen over my head. A blue light indicating clairaudience was seen at my throat. These are messages I received through mediums, and also the words were given that my voice would be heard on the earth plane. And I got to learn that gradually, that even though it was, obviously very, very surprising is an understatement for me, but I got to understand that that's what he was actually going to be doing through me. And that it made sense to me when I was given a revelation, which was when he spoke in the Piscean age and said that, when I come back, even if people say that I'm here or there, you won't see me, so don't believe that. It was because he was never going to come back in human form, because he was going to teach us spiritually. And that was in line with his actual also additional purpose to enabling us to understand, to love our neighbor as ourselves. But it was about the fact that we would learn that, as he was saying, that we all resurrect. But the resurrection has come sort of almost like a thing that is not a normality. So it's just a simple fact that you're on the earth, you have a certain amount of time, whether it's a child, a baby, or an adult, there's a certain amount of time that you've come to have. And then when that learning is done, the work that you've come to do is done, you transition back to the spiritual realm. And that was the other thing that he was coming to show, so
With the
people could
resurrection,
understand.
The
life.
resurrection means that we all live eternally. Is that what you're saying? So that we come to the earth and then we die, but we don't really die because we never die. Is that what you're saying?
That's it, and that's it. And even the terms that he would use, it wouldn't. He talks about it that death is an ugly word. It's because it's not really death. The body obviously disintegrates, but we only came here for a short period of time, and so that is literally it. That when then people get perspective, like when people understandably, if you've got the human conception of death and somebody has, have come to the ending of their mortal life, and you mourn them and you're very depressed and you're very down, but they came just as we have for a short period of time, and then they go back and they continue to live. And if they have obviously taken on their learnings and teachings, they're going to continue growing in the spiritual realm. Like for example, my sister was one of the second people that I received a message from when I started receiving messages from mediums, and she was miscarried before I was born, so I never knew her. But what happened was she gave me such incredible messages right at the very beginning. This is the beginning of my journey of receiving medium readings. And she had told the medium what I'd been doing that day. And at that time, I was living in London and I was moving around furniture in my home to put gym equipment in my home, as I do here. And she told the medium that's what I had been doing, just to give me evidence of, the fact that it was something that I could start to, understand. But then it was more about how that the beings in the spiritual realm were going to help me to manage my time better and start helping me to unfold and go forward. But everybody has a limited time on earth. So even when, as I was saying, when we, understandably, if you've got only the human conception of death, it can be very distressing if somebody is no longer there in their mortal form. But what it is, once you then start taking on, oh, okay, they came here as, if you like, the earth school to learn, they've gone back, they're taking their learning back to their group soul, because our group soul is the priority. We all belong to a group soul.
Group soul.
That's group soul.
Yeah. What is a group soul?
A group soul is, if you like, the combination of lots of different human personalities and also other parts of the evolution in I suppose, a way in which is with a particular purpose. So we all belong to a group soul. And what happens is, if you like, when we look at, because part of the group soul actually progresses in other spheres, and part of the group soul manifests as humans on earth. So when we go back to the spiritual realm, we take the learning back to the group soul, but the group soul is known as an individual. And it is unlike here where we see ourselves as individuals, but the group soul is as an individual. So it's very amazing the way it works, because what it means is that whatever we do, when we take that back to the group soul, whether it is a positive or a negative, it impacts the whole of the group soul.
Okay.
Hence the beauty, if you like, of the individual, where we start to really deepen the understanding of loving yourself, loving your neighbor as yourself.
This is really amazing. It's really, really. I just wanted to ask if you said that in the spiritual realm that people still are learning, because you said that we come here to learn, and then in the spiritual realm, we still are learning. So, what's the difference between the learning we're doing on this plane on Earth, and and then what we're doing when we pass?
Yeah, because in the spiritual realm, you have the purview of the spiritual realm. So what the learning is that you're going to be, if you're, for example, part of a team that is helping somebody on earth, you'll be able to see the whole purview of the spiritual realm. So you'll know how to help them, what light to shine on their path to help them to grow. So, for example, my two grandfathers, my paternal and my maternal grandfather, um, they gave me a message, because with my brother, I just I was going to come back to that. I initially thought, when I told Jane what her husband had done, I thought she would be distraught. So I thought, let me make sure that my brother gives her all the support for her to get through this. But he became very cold, and basically from 2012 to 2018, he kind of let go and just was, I don't want to know that about this. I'm not really interested in supporting you. In 2018, he then wrote a message and said, actually, I know I didn't support you like a brother should. I didn't show you any compassion, and basically was appearing to apologize. So he resumed a relationship in 2018. But then he's a musician, and I was kind of really excited about going to see him play because I used to love supporting him. And then, bearing in mind that he had said he understood everything and he was showing, me that he was sorry, what happened was in the early of 2019, he had said, "Oh, I'm going to be performing this place," and I was so excited to go and see him play finally again. And then it was a conversation that just was like a throwaway conversation he had, sort of very quickly shortly after, and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm inviting the Jane, and I'm inviting Jane's husband." And I was so shocked because I was like, I don't understand. You said that you understand what you did was wrong. And what happened was on the February the 24th, 2019, I received messages through those two paternal grandfathers. And they said to me that there's some very strong characters around me, but I know what is right. I know not to listen. And they applaud me every time I get knocked down, because I always get up again. And they said, just continue being on the right path. I didn't know what they were talking about or who they were talking about, to be honest with you. The following day, I had a conversation with my brother, and it was the last conversation we had because he was very unpleasant. And what I had gotten to see was the apology that he made wasn't real. And he said he would always invite that person to all his performances. So I, understood that that wasn't a true apology. And I got to learn that, I might have very few people in my life here that are actually real relationships, like my cousin and also my son. But that is the one thing that you realize, that it doesn't matter who you are with in a relationship, platonic or non-platonic, as long as their heart is pure in the right place in terms of intention. That is the best thing that you can have. And the one thing I'll add actually is just a slightly different kind of, quickly before we finish, is one message I got, which I think is an amazing thing because I was over the moon when I got it, is, doesn't mean you'll always get this with every reading, but I got to know who my partner was. And I got to know
Yes, I
who my
remember reading
soulmate
about that in
was.
your book, that you were told beforehand who he was going to be. Yes, yes, I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what it meant was that even though there was a gap between getting to see who it was, I knew anybody that appeared to be someone I might be interested in, or vice versa, I knew not to go down that road. So, it's just really, the books are kind of about getting us now into this next age of spiritual growth, and actually, really activating our spirit sense, going to trusted mediums. I know sometimes lots of religions, they get confused and they think that, we should be wary of, people doing this, but they're people that have been given a gift, by spirit, by God, by higher power, by higher energy. And it's like with anything, get testimonials, check out, you can have someone on earth that is pretending to be a great being doing great work and they're not. So, go to them, get light shone on your path, you know what I mean? Because the spirit, like you were saying about the learning and how it is that we differ in what we can learn here, they have the purview that we don't have. So, go to your trusted mediums, do your research, find the testimonials, go and get hands-on healing, and, get aligned in the most strongest way possible so you can be on the right path. And, as I got to find out who my partner was, that was amazing, because it was like, I never would have thought I would have found out about that, but I did. And I was like, okay, so I don't have to be keeping to making the same, kind of errors in terms of identifying who I think could be a potential partner.
So it's like maintaining that frequency as well, so that you can be clear about what your path is, and you don't deviate, um, and just do things that are not necessarily wrong, even, but just not for you, so to speak. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, because you can easily pick up something that sounds great, but it isn't for you. And they've got a different plan, and the plan is going to be making your heart jump for joy and sing. So yeah, absolutely.
That's so great. I mean, I've got so many more questions. I probably maybe can have you on again sometime, but
Yeah.
coming to the end of it, so of this one. So, but I was going to ask if you offer also the healing and the mediumship you were talking about. Do you do that for other people? Do you offer that too, in terms of
Right.
sessions and stuff
Yeah.
for other people? Because if not, if so, we could maybe put, in case that someone was interested in that.
So what it is now is I used to do the hands-on healing, and it does happen, but it's more kind of like I will be just shown like this person, da da da. There's a conversation, so it's more kind of what's going on around me in terms of the hands-on healing. But it's the books, and the books are the thing that it takes everybody through their journees, and
Okay.
spirit will be with them, bringing them to the places
Similar
that
effect, basically.
yes, that's it, and that's what they're gonna individually get. So it's like a personal spiritual journey that everybody will have with the books.
Okay.
Um,
I want to say thank you. Thank you so much for doing this. I mean, it's just been so
no,
fascinating. And like I said,
thank,
I could have spent another 2 hours just asking you questions and stuff. So
no,
happy that
thank you
you
so.
agreed to do this, and just thank you. Thank you for your presence and your light, and for helping, people in the way that you're showing up. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and likewise to you, Nicolette, because it is very evident that that is reflected in who you are. I see it and I hear it. So absolutely, and
That's,
clearly
yeah.
this is what is supposed to happen. You're the first media doing an interview, and I have no doubt that that was chosen specifically. So they have chosen you to do this. And once you see the way the books will take off, because you'll see more about it being beyond my books, I think hopefully you'll feel like, okay, they wanted me to do this.
Get your swing on, darling, the needle's in the groove. Early records, baby, making hearts and minds move.